I just didn't realize that what I've learned is that valuable to that many people. I knew and I understand that most of the industry is owner operators, but I just assumed that everyone was an owner operator because they were forced to. I didn't realize that a lot of people want to remain small. And that being said, like, they don't want to have to work 60 hours a week. They don't want to have to work 80 hours a week. And a lot of people don't understand how I've positioned myself to not have to do that. And I did that for many, many years. And I found ways to offset that. Check it out. I got my Modern Craftsman beanie on. If you guys don't have one of these beanies, go on the website, get one for yourself. moderncraftsman.co. It's nice. I like it. And it's freezing in my office right now. So I'm rocking it, keeping me nice and warm. Let's see. I'm recording this a little bit late today. I had some meetings this morning. My mom actually moved back closer to home. So I went with one of our friends from college is a kitchen designer. So I met with her to go over some kitchen design and do a measure on them. So that was my morning. I hadn't had time with all this traveling for work. I haven't had time to be able to get over there. And I didn't have time to get in the office earlier to record this. So a little bit late, but I'm going to get right to it. It was interesting. Nick and I just recorded our main Modern Craftsman podcast, and the guest that we had on, if you guys haven't listened to it, his name's Eric. Well, I don't know when this is going to come out versus that podcast, but either way, if it's before, keep an eye out for it. If it's after, go listen to it. His name's Eric Reinhold. He owns 30 by 40 design. He started his business as an architect, works by himself, didn't ever want to grow a large business. And he wanted to create some sort of business model that he didn't have to kill himself, working a million hours, pretty much the same thing that a lot of us smaller owner operators do on a daily basis, something that I did for quite a few years and I didn't want to do anymore. So the conversation was very appropriate from a timing perspective because I had this idea for this blog post that I wanted to record or podcast I want to record. And I wrote it over the course of a day or two, but all of this, what I was thinking was fresh on my mind. And then we got Eric on the podcast, and a lot of his thoughts and what he's put into place are very similar to what I think and what I feel and what this podcast is in reference to. So it was just really an appropriate time to have him on and have a conversation with him. So check that out if you haven't. That's on the main Modern Craftsman podcast. Also, if you want to read the blog post, moderncraftsman.co, there's a blog section. But basically, I've had this realization over the past couple of months where we've been traveling for work, traveling for Modern Craftsman. I haven't had the tool belt on as much as I typically do. And a lot of the presentations that I'm teaching, especially at IBS, a lot of times with what I'm doing and what you're doing for these shows is you're trying to create a conversation or a presentation that's going to fit the bill for as many people as possible. I don't know who the audience is going to be, so it's like, how can I make this conversation engaging for a lot of people? And for the one at IBS, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do what I do and speak to what I know and speak to my experience. And even as far as my presentation goes, I'm like, I don't get on and read from a slide on this podcast. I write my blog post out and then I ad lib it and I I freestyle it and I speak to what's on my mind, and that's just my style. Whether you like it or you hate it, it's just my style. So my presentations were of that same mindset where it's like I'm not going to create a PowerPoint and just click 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 read through it. I really just I had a list of notes and I wanted to get through them and I wanted to have an open conversation with the audience, and it showed me how much people value what I do and how I've made it possible to create a business where I don't do a super high volume of work and I'm able to make money. Um, and a lot of times you think you're going to be at these shows and it's these bigger firms who want to know, how to scale from a dozen to 2 dozen employees, how to go from 10 million to 20 million in sales. And like, I can't speak to that because I don't know. I never wanted to know. And I don't think that I will ever know. And I've realized that for so long, everyone's spoken about how, and this is myself included, but the industry needs to change, right? The way that this pans out is you get into the trades, you develop an affinity or an appreciation for the trades, you enjoy working with your hands, you enjoy creating something, but as life progresses and you get married and you have a family and you buy a house, you need to make more money than oftentimes the rates can justify for working for another small company. Um, the way that we're built and the way that we're established is for the owner of the company to make money, and it's difficult to be able to offer benefits and healthcare and paid vacation and a van and 401k retirement, all that stuff to these small businesses because they can't justify the overhead because customers are not willing to bear that overhead. And that's just the industry that's just our industry. That's what we have created and that's what we have perpetuated over the years by nobody changing, by nothing changing. And so I had this realization recently where it's like, I'm not going to try and speak to running a massive business. If I want to make a change within the industry and I want to help people, and also what led me to this is all of the consulting calls that I've been doing. People are calling me and they want to know, their goal is not to grow a large company. Their goal is to run a small operation, maybe 2 3 people max. Maybe they just want to work by themselves, but they're having trouble not having to kill themselves and work 100 hours a week and concede all their time and free estimates and all of that stuff, and they don't understand how I'm able to make money doing what I'm doing with the low volume of work. um, so I've realized that a lot of the consulting calls that I'm doing are with regard to that. Duh, that would make sense, right? That's what I do. That's how I've created a living. That's how I built and sustained my business model. But for some reason, I always thought that, and not necessarily, I thought that I was unique for not wanting those things, for not wanting a huge company, for not wanting to scale my operation. I thought that most other people wanted to, and I didn't realize that there's a lot of people out there like me and they're struggling to make money and they're struggling to understand how to compose their business in a way that affords them luxuries of a larger business, um, while not maintaining the overhead. And so through all of these presentations and through these calls, I've realized that if I can help people create sustainable businesses while being small, it will position them in a way and create a business model that may not, like for my market, it may not necessarily be scalable. If I were in a different market or if I did a different type of work, I think that it would be scalable. I think that in the future, it might be scalable if that's what you want to do. But there's definitely markets where this mentality and the systems that I have and the processes and the standards that I have in place are scalable. That's not necessarily what I want to do. But if I can help people become profitable as a 1 2 3 man show, they're positioning themselves and creating a network and a customer base that they're already profitable, that growth will come that much easier, because I think that a lot of companies grow because they're not making enough money. So they think, "Hey, if I double my sales, I'll make twice as much money." And obviously that's not realistic and that's not the case. Um, you may double your sales and not make any money. You're certainly not going to make double by doubling your sales. That's impossible. Um, but you might make less money by doubling your sales because people don't understand what that looks like and what that does to your bottom line from a business perspective. So I think that if we can create businesses that create some scarcity and create a demand for whatever it is that you're good at, that we're going to help this industry as a whole. when when we start all having our specialties, when we are hired because we are good at certain things, not because our pricing is in line with what the customers want to spend. And obviously that is important, but that shouldn't be the first thing when you're looking for a company. It needs to start with, hey, we like this person's work. Hey, this person can get this done really quickly. Hey, this person specializes in live-in remodels. Hey, this person does a really great job painting. Hey, this person was a referral from so and so's mom, and they were super kind and great with the kids that were in their house. They let our dog, whatever it may be, that's where it should start. And then we can start discussing budget and program and everything else. And I think that if we're able to do that on a smaller level, um, and create, right, our residential industry is made up of a couple of like, you have the least, our business is made, or our industry is made up of a ton of owner operators. Like, you have the outliers, and the outliers are going to be really big residential companies, like massive residential companies. And then there's going to be probably mid-sized companies. And I think that they're like the smaller portion of our industry. And then you're going to have the bulk of our industry, which is made up of one, two, three, four-man shows. So you have these outliers, which are like the mid-size and the super large companies. And then the bulk of our industry is people like myself, where they work by themselves, they handle subs, they have one or two men, they might have a part-time guy. Like, that's the bulk of our industry. Subcontractors, general contractors, builders. I don't know the percentage, but most of our industry is made up of that. So for a long time, I said, hey, that's where it needs to change. It needs to be bigger companies, bigger businesses. But like, how do we get there? Our business does not, our industry and our customer base and our demographic typically doesn't support that, right? So you either need to have a big company that has enough volume of work that they can support the overhead. Um, you probably, you could work for really high end companies where they specialize, and maybe they don't do quite as much of the volume, but they have enough in sales that they can support that overhead. But most of us aren't afforded that luxury because we work for the middle class. We do mid-level renovations or builds, and there's just not enough wiggle room in our numbers based on everyone else who's serving the same customer base, that we can't afford those things. And I realized that as small business owners and these smaller operations, that we should be afforded those things as well. And I call them luxuries, but realistically, they're pretty much the basis of what you want when you go to look for a job, right? If you were interviewing for any other professional job, it's like, all right, what's your salary? What's your time off? What's your health benefits? Um, and for some reason, our customers want what they want, but they're not willing to afford us those things. And again, I call them luxuries. Um, but what if I could help our industry, or my network, or people that are in the same boat as I was in early on in my career, create a career opportunity to be able to make money and to afford those things. And while they may not be able to afford those things for a 12-man company, maybe they can do it for a 1 or 2-man company. And I think that as that changes, people will begin to understand the costs associated with hiring us. And I think the price point will change. And rather than us continually sharpening our pencils or not offering health benefits or not providing 401k, because it's so hard to land the jobs because it's so competitive out there, that if the standard is, hey, these 1, 2, 3-man companies aren't necessarily less money than hiring one of the bigger firms, it affords us an opportunity to either make a little bit more money and be able to pay people a better rate and offer them some incentives to working, or possibly we remain lean and we just are able to make a better living. But it gives us an opportunity that a lot of these bigger companies have, that we don't have to concede hours, we don't have to concede our time. And one thing that I tell people a lot of times on these consulting calls, where it's like, I'm not going to, like, the reason that I'm lean and the structure of my business and my overhead and how lean I am is not going to be an opportunity for me to be more competitive with my pricing. At the end of the day, I want that to benefit my business, not necessarily my customers. So I'm not remaining lean and reducing my overhead and operating um, in a very efficient manner to be more competitive. It's to have more money in my pocket or to be able to afford a higher rate for an employee. That's the reason I'm doing it. And I think that once we position ourselves in a way that more of these owner operators, right, the bulk of our industry starts charging more appropriately and starts not using their lean and efficient business for being more competitive, but actually uses it to incentivize employees or make more money. I think that the baseline of our industry and the foot in the door pricing, everything starts to go up. And I think that that levels the playing fields. And I think that the disparity between the bigger companies and the little companies, it gets closer, right? The bigger companies don't have as much of um, a reason to perform at the level or do the volume that they're doing, because they may be able to scale back some and make the same amount of money. These smaller companies now don't need to work 2, 3 jobs at a time, or if they choose to do so, they're at least getting compensated adequately. They're not overlapping jobs and working 2, 3 jobs at a time to take a deposit from one job and put it towards another. And they're not treading water. They're not robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I just had this realization again through these consulting calls and through these presentations, that someone needs to speak for these people, and someone needs to help these people. And I realized that a lot of what I was doing for the industry was for growth, but not necessarily the way that I've found growth to prove to be successful for myself. And foolishly, like, it's right in front of my face. That is how I should be positioning myself. I thought that in order for things to change, um, I might need to do more. And I think that actually I could probably do less. And again, somewhat of the catalyst or the impetus for this was at IBS, where I did this remodeling show, and there was home builders there. Ross Strathui was there, who is obviously this old house, but has his HVAC company. There was a lady who worked for a software program. There was a remodeling contractor who ran crews that did bathroom renovations, so a bigger company. And all of these guys and girls came up to me afterwards. And again, I had a very engaging conversation with them. They asked a lot of questions during the presentation, and they were like, hey, we're in the same boat, or we were in the same boat that you are. A lot of what you said really resonated with me. It's super helpful. Can you give me your notes? I'm going to start integrating a lot of this, what you're doing, as a standard practice within my business. And I just didn't realize that what I've learned is that valuable to that many people. I knew and I understand that most of the industry is owner operators, but I just assumed that everyone was an owner operator because they were forced to. Um, because of the natural progression that I had stated earlier, where it's like you work for somebody, you need to make more money. Only way to make more money is to go this route. I didn't realize that a lot of people want to remain small. And that being said, like they don't want to have to work 60 hours a week. They don't want to have to work 80 hours a week. And a lot of people don't understand how I've positioned myself to not have to do that. And I did that for many, many years. And I found ways to offset that. And a lot of things that I put into place and everything else. And this is what my conversations were about during these teaching sessions, presentations. And this is what a lot of the conversations are about when I have these consulting calls. It's just helping people like myself in the position that I am find ways to create a sustainable business model that they don't necessarily have to scale. And I thought that, I would have to, or that everyone has to at some point in order to make more money. And I'm realizing that like my perspective is valuable. And after having this conversation with Eric today on the main podcast, it just completely reaffirmed that and strengthened my argument where you can find ways to build your business and supplement your business and market your business in a way that allows you to not have to work as much. And it doesn't matter if you have one follower, if you have 100 followers, if you have a million followers. It's about creating and selling who you are and what you do and creating a system to ensure that the jobs that come across your plate and the leads that come across your plate are the fit for you and what you're good at. And again, it doesn't matter, I don't need a million subscribers on YouTube. I don't need a million subscribers on Instagram. Even if I had zero, when a customer comes to me and I've spent 3 years documenting my process and what I do, and I send them to whatever platform that story lives on, now they can make a decision whether they want to hire me or not. And I think that once we stop creating a really wide sales funnel with the hopes that we will be able to convince people that we're a good fit for them, and we narrow that funnel and we are confident in who we are and what we do and what makes us profitable and happy, that we have to worry about finding our right customer and not having this really casting this really wide net where it's like, now let me convince you that you're my customer. It's like, no, I'm fine casting a wide net, but I want to put systems in place that are going to funnel them before they really get to my time to be like, hey, yeah, you're who we want, rather than the other way around where it's like I'm casting this really wide net and then I'm hopping in the water with that net and saying, hey, this is what we do. This is what we do. This is why you should hire me. This is why you should spend a little more. Like, no, forget about all that. Create the story that tells that and have the people decide whether they want to stay in that net or they want to jump out and go get caught in another net. Um, I want to create the system that's going to string that or create that funnel that's going to distill. So by the time they are ready to talk to me, and by the time we are ready to have an actual interaction, it's like, yeah, there's scarcity there. We need to hire him. We need to get on a schedule. We need to see what we need to do to be able to hire him to do our renovation. And that has proven to not only be lucrative for me from a number standpoint as far as what I can charge for a job, but also a time standpoint, like how much time I'm saving by not interacting with all of those dozens of leads that come in each and every week, each and every month. Um, so it's saving me time, and then also I'm able to charge a premium on top of that because there's scarcity. And if you want my time, I only have so much of it. There's plenty of people who want my time and are willing to pay my rate for that time. So I'm going to use this net and this funnel to find them. And I want to spend as little time and energy as possible, distilling that entire pool of people down. So I had this realization. All of these presentations have reaffirmed this. The conversation with Eric today reaffirmed this. And I realized that I do believe that I can make an impact, not necessarily with the amount of jobs that I can do because I'm going to be limited, right? How many customers can I educate in my lifetime if I'm doing 3, 4 jobs a year and I work until retirement, right? My reach is limited. My impact is not that great. But if I can share this with you guys and girls, or I can present on this, or we can teach groups of people how to do this, or what works for me, like that's all I can speak to. I know how to make a small owner operator type business profitable, and how to make it lucrative, and not how to kill myself working 80 hours a week, right? I can work a manageable amount of hours each week and I can make a living. And maybe I don't get rich, but, and you can say, hey, you're exchanging time for money. But at the end of the day, like most contractors are attempting to exchange time for money, and they're really just conceding a lot of time. And maybe there's a little bit of money exchanged if they priced it right, if they didn't forget about something, if they managed their bills correctly, if they knew what their overhead, what the cost of doing business, what their labor burden was, if they formatted and structured their contract correctly. So there's a lot of things that go into this, principles aside, right? When you get into the specifics, but if I can help people do that, and then they can then engage with their customers and educate their customers, my impact is broadened. Um, and for me, that seems to be the route that I'd like to continue down, to be able to pass as much of my knowledge off as possible. Again, I'm not perfect. There's a lot of mistakes that I've made, but I do understand how to create a niche market for myself in a place that may not be able to bear that market, right? It took a little bit of time to invest in this, but I did create something that was not here in the first place, and I created a business model, and it's been a sustainable business model that wasn't necessarily, and still to this day isn't commonplace with where I am. The way that I'm doing things is very similar to these bigger companies. And again, I'm making my money through being lean, rather than my lean efficient business style being a competitive advantage to these other companies. So I'm creating that scarcity. I'm creating that niche business, and then I'm using my lean natured business, to create higher profit margins for myself. So if this is something that you are interested in, if you're an owner operator, I don't. It's crazy to me to think that like I didn't have this realization as to how many people are in the position that I was in. And you speak to people and we hear it on the podcast, but like when I did a presentation at NAHB and a dozen people walked up to me afterwards, and like the big thing for me was that it wasn't just people younger than me, it wasn't people my age, it was people who were 60 years old, 65 years old in the business, where it was like, I never thought of that. Like we've just been doing things this way for so long. And at this point, I'm going to implement that into my business. And they've been in business for 40 years. So that is really what spoke to me. We spoke a little about this with Nick, where it's like you feel like you have the imposter syndrome, where you're standing up and you're speaking in front of a bunch of people about your business. And it's like, well, why am I speaking about this? Why am I the one that can speak to this topic and this subject, when I've only been in business 15 years? I only started figuring things out 7 years ago. That I work by myself, or I have somebody part time and then I manage subs. Like, why am I how am I legitimate enough to do this? And I realized that like there's a lot of people who just don't have the sense. They struggled and they don't understand that they can find a market that supports the lifestyle and the business that they want to lead. And there's ways to do that regardless of where you live, what you do, and what your markets looks like. So again, that really spoke to me when I had these older men and women coming up. A lot of them were husband and wives, where the husband does, or the wife does the books and the husband managed the the actual field work. And they were like, yeah, this is definitely something we're going to do because he spends so much time wasting this. These are the customers that we're getting. We don't want those customers. And I just realized that there's an opportunity there to be able to help a lot more people and continue down the path that I want to be on. So if you are interested in that, or if you would want to see some sort of group lesson, or group class, or we set something up to dovetail or align with another trade show, or I know Nick has a contractor coalition summit going on where I could kind of shoehorn myself into that and you'd be interested, let me know. Obviously, I'm doing the consulting calls each week, that I'm setting a little time aside for 1 or 2 calls a week. Again, so that's space is limited there, but it's something that you want to discuss. Just shoot me an email, tyler@trghomeconcepts.com, and we can discuss what that looks like, on my end. And if there's an opportunity or something that you're struggling with or a question that you have, to see if that's a fit for you, just reach out to me and let me know. But all this coming together pretty quickly here, and then with the trade shows, and then the conversation today was like the cherry on top, where I'm like, yeah, I need to do something about this. So that's the plan for now. But as always, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I'm recording it a little bit later, so I'm gonna run before the kids break down my door. Nick and I are headed up. By the time you hear this, we will have wrapped up our JLC show. I want to say thank you to everyone who signed up for that. One of our classes sold out already, which is it's humbling. Thank you again. Sometimes I forget how many people um, are unsure of what they're doing and how many people are looking for help. And I look and I'm like, well, what the hell do I know? But the fact that this many people signed up and sold out one of our presentations before the show is pretty incredible. So I just want to say thank you all for that. In the meantime, hop on the website, order some swag for yourself, moderncraftsman.co. Support all of our main podcast sponsors. We have Builder Trend, we have Anderson Windows, and let me know if I can help you in any way. Tyler@trghomeconcepts.com. I'll catch you guys next week.